I refuse to marry my boyfriend. After he publicly proposed, now his mom is suing me and he's stalking me. 3 months later, he's in jail. I, 28F, have been dating Tyler, 30M, for the past 5 years, and I'm still reeling from what happened last week. To understand the full picture, I need to take you back to where it all began. I met Tyler during our final year of college. At the time, I was going through one of the toughest periods of my life. My parents had just finalized a bitter divorce that had been brewing for years. My dad, who I'd always been close to, moved across the country for a new job, leaving me feeling abandoned. My mom spiraled into depression, and I found myself taking on the role of her caretaker while trying to keep up with my classes and working part-time at a local coffee shop to make ends meet. Enter Tyler. He was this charismatic, larger-than-life figure on campus. Everyone knew him. He was the life of every party, the guy who could talk his way out of any situation. When he first started showing interest in me, I couldn't believe it. I was this stressed-out, sleep-deprived mess, and here was this incredibly popular, seemingly carefree guy wanting to spend time with me. Our early days were a whirlwind. Tyler had this way of making me forget all my problems. We'd go on spontaneous road trips, sneak into music festivals, stay up all night talking about our dreams. For the first time in years, I felt light, happy, and free from responsibility. Tyler encouraged me to live a little, and I embraced it wholeheartedly. But as graduation approached, reality started to set in. I was frantically applying for jobs, worried about how I'd support myself and help my mom. Tyler, on the other hand, seemed completely unconcerned about the future. He'd talk vaguely about starting his own business or becoming a famous musician, but there were never any concrete plans. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a marketing firm. It wasn't glamorous, long hours, demanding clients, and a boss who seemed to thrive on criticism. But it was a foot in the door, and I was determined to make the most of it. Tyler, meanwhile, bounced from job to job. He'd work as a bartender for a few weeks, then quit because the hours were too demanding. He'd get a gig as a sales rep, only to be fired for missing too many shifts. I tried to be supportive. I'd help him polish his resume, practice interview questions with him, even reached out to my own contacts to see if anyone was hiring. But nothing seemed to stick. Tyler always had an excuse. The job was beneath him. The boss was an idiot. The work was too boring. As time went on, I found myself shouldering more and more of our financial responsibilities. At first, it was just covering Tyler's share of dinner when we went out. Then it was loaning him money for rent, which he swore he'd pay back but never did. Before I knew it, I was essentially supporting both of us on my entry-level salary. The strain started to show in other areas of our relationship. Tyler's partying, which had once seemed fun and exciting, now felt immature and irresponsible. He'd stay out until the early hours of the morning, then sleep all day, missing job interviews or family obligations. I'd come home from a long day at work to find our apartment a mess, with Tyler playing video games surrounded by empty pizza boxes and beer cans. I tried talking to him about it countless times. I'd gently suggest that maybe he should cut back on the partying, or that we should start budgeting better. Tyler would always react the same way. He'd get defensive, accuse me of nagging, and promise to do better. But nothing ever changed. Things came to a head about a year ago. I'd just received a promotion at work, and I was excited to celebrate with Tyler. I made reservations at our favorite restaurant and even bought a new dress for the occasion. But when I got home, Tyler was passed out on the couch, reeking of alcohol. There were two girls I'd never seen before in our kitchen, helping themselves to my food and alcohol. When I woke Tyler up, he couldn't even remember how they'd ended up there. That night, I gave Tyler an ultimatum. I told him he needed to get his act together, find a steady job, contribute to our household, and cut back on the partying. He promised he would, swearing up and down that he'd change. And for a while, it seemed like he was trying. He got a job at a local gym and started coming home at a reasonable hour. But old habits die hard. Within a few months, Tyler was back to his old ways. He'd call in sick to work because he was hungover, or he'd blow his entire paycheck on a new gaming system instead of contributing to rent. I felt like I was dating a teenager, not a grown man. 2 months ago, I'd finally had enough. I sat Tyler down and told him I couldn't do this anymore. I was exhausted, financially drained, and emotionally spent. Tyler begged for another chance, promising he'd change for real this time. But I'd heard it all before. I told him we were done, packed my things, and moved in with my friend Sarah. The breakup was hard. Despite everything, I did love Tyler. We'd been through so much together, and walking away felt like admitting defeat. But I knew it was the right decision for my own well-being, which brings us to last week. I was leaving the gym after a workout when I noticed the receptionist, Eileen, acting strange. She kept trying to engage me in conversation, which was unusual. As I was about to head out, I heard a commotion behind me. I turned around to see Tyler walking in, surrounded by a group of our old friends. He was holding an enormous bouquet of roses and had this nervous smile on his face. Before I could process what was happening, Tyler was down on one knee. He launched into this speech about how he'd been lost without me, how he'd realized what a mistake he'd made, and how he wanted to spend the rest of his life making it up to me. Then he pulled out a ring box and asked me to marry him. I was in shock. I looked around at all the expectant faces, our friends, the gym staff, even some random gym goers who had stopped to watch. And then I looked at Tyler, this man I'd spent 5 years of my life with, who was now putting me in this impossible situation. I took a deep breath and reminded Tyler that we had broken up 2 months ago. I told him I was sorry, but my answer was no. The look on his face was devastating. Our friends looked shocked and uncomfortable. I could hear people murmuring around us. Unable to bear it any longer, I turned and walked out of the gym. Since then, my phone has been blowing up. Tyler's friends are calling me heartless for humiliating him like that. His mom called to say I owed Tyler an apology for embarrassing him publicly. Even some of my own friends are saying I could have handled it better. I feel awful about how everything went down. I never wanted to hurt Tyler or embarrass him in public, but I also feel like he put me in an impossible situation. I had been clear about my feelings when we broke up. I don't think I should have to pretend to consider his proposal just to spare his feelings. ATA for refusing to marry him and walking away. Edit. Thank you all for your responses. To clarify a few things, Tyler and I dated for 5 years, but we've been broken up for 2 months now. I moved out of our shared apartment when we broke up. I've blocked Tyler on all social media and my phone, but he keeps finding ways to contact me through mutual friends or by making new accounts. Yes, I've told all our mutual friends about the breakup. Most of them know the whole story, which is why I was so surprised to see them there for the proposal. Update 1. It's been about a week since the proposal incident, and I can't believe how much has happened. I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments on my original post. Your words have been a source of strength during this chaotic time. First, let me address the biggest development. Tyler's mom wasn't bluffing about the apology. Yesterday, I received a letter from a lawyer stating that she intends to sue me for emotional distress and public humiliation. I know it sounds absurd, but seeing it in official legal language has me stressed out. I've never been involved in any legal issues before, and the thought of going to court is terrifying. But that's not even the worst part. Tyler has escalated his behavior in ways I never thought he was capable of. He's shown up at my workplace twice now, causing scenes in the lobby. The first time, he came in with another huge bouquet of flowers, begging loudly for another chance. Security had to escort him out. The second time, he was clearly drunk and became belligerent when the receptionist wouldn't let him up to my office. My boss has been understanding so far, but I can tell she's concerned about how this might affect our clients if it continues. I've also noticed Tyler's car parked outside my new apartment building several times. I don't think he knows which unit is mine, but the fact that he's found out where I live is unsettling. I've started varying my routines, taking different routes to work, and always looking over my shoulder. This constant state of alertness is exhausting. I've reached out to some of our mutual friends who were at the proposal, trying to understand how they could have gone along with Tyler's plan. Most of them claim they had no idea what Tyler was really planning. Apparently, he told them he wanted to surprise me with a grand romantic gesture to win me back. A few admitted they thought it was a bad idea but didn't want to say anything. I'm hurt that none of them thought to warn me or tried to talk Tyler out of it. My best friend, Sarah, 27F, has been my rock through all of this. We've been friends since high school, and she's seen the ups and downs of my relationship with Tyler. She was actually the one who helped me move out when Tyler and I broke up. Now, she's offered to let me stay at her place for a while if I feel unsafe at mine. I'm seriously considering taking her up on it, especially after what happened yesterday. I was leaving work, later than usual because I'd been trying to catch up on projects I'd fallen behind on due to all this drama. As I approached my car in the parking garage, I saw a figure leaning against it. My heart started racing until I realized it was Tyler. He looked terrible. Unshaven, clothes wrinkled like he'd been sleeping in them, eyes bloodshot. When he saw me, he started crying and begging me to give him another chance. He said he'd get help, find a job, do anything if I'd just take him back. It was heartbreaking to see him like that. For a moment, I was transported back to all the good times we'd had together. The late-night conversations, the adventures, the way he could always make me laugh. But then I remembered all the broken promises, the financial stress, the emotional toll of always being the responsible one. I steeled myself and told him firmly that we were over and that he needed to leave me alone. As I was driving home, I noticed Tyler following me in his car. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel as I tried to figure out what to do. I didn't want to lead him to my new place, so I made a split-second decision to drive to the nearest police station instead. When he saw where I was going, he sped off. I went inside and filed a report about his stalking behavior. The police were sympathetic, but said there wasn't much they could do without more evidence. They suggested I start documenting every interaction and consider getting a restraining order. The word restraining order hit me like a ton of bricks. How had my life come to this point where I was considering legal action against the man I once thought I'd spend my life with? I'm feeling overwhelmed and scared. I never thought Tyler would act like this. In all our years together, even during our worst fights, he'd never made me feel physically unsafe. Part of me feels guilty, wondering if I could have done something differently. Maybe if I'd been more patient, or if I'd insisted on couples therapy earlier in our relationship. But another part of me is angry that he's putting me through this, that he's making me question my own judgment and feel unsafe in my own life. I'm considering getting a restraining order, but I'm worried about how Tyler might react. Would it make him back off? Or would it push him to escalate further? And what about his mom's lawsuit threat? Should I be taking that seriously? Do I need to hire a lawyer? I feel like I'm drowning in questions and uncertainties. The strong, independent woman I thought I was seems to have disappeared, replaced by someone who jumps at every sound and second guesses every decision. I'm trying to stay strong, but it's hard. Any advice would be appreciated. How do I protect myself without completely upending my life? How do I move forward when I feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder? Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. First, the good news. I got the restraining order against Tyler. The process was stressful and emotionally draining, but having it in place has given me some peace of mind. I had to recount every incident of Tyler's behavior in court, which meant reliving some of the scariest moments of the past few months. But the judge was understanding and granted the order. Now, for the not-so-good news. Tyler's mom made good on her threat to sue me. I got served with papers last week for intentional infliction of emotional distress and defamation of character. It's as ridiculous as it sounds, but I still had to hire a lawyer to deal with it. The financial strain of legal fees is adding another layer of stress to an already difficult situation. Thankfully, my lawyer says the case has no merit and will likely be thrown out. Still, the thought of having to go to court and face Tyler's family is daunting. Tyler's reaction to the restraining order was not what I expected. The day after it was granted, he showed up at Sarah's place, where I've been staying, completely drunk. He was yelling and banging on the door, saying he just wanted to talk. His words were slurred, but I could make out phrases like, "I've changed," and "just give me a chance to explain." Sarah called the police, and Tyler was arrested for violating the order. He spent the night in jail and was released on bail the next day. This incident seems to have been a wake-up call for some of our mutual friends. A few of them reached out to apologize for not taking my concerns seriously earlier. They admitted they'd bought into Tyler's version of events, where he painted himself as the victim of a cruel breakup. Hearing about his arrest and seeing the reality of the situation has changed their perspective. Tyler's best friend, Mark, 99M, even called me. We've known each other since college, and he's always been Tyler's staunchest defender, but even he couldn't excuse Tyler's recent behavior. Mark told me he's been trying to convince Tyler to get help, to enter a rehab program or see a therapist. It's a small comfort, but I appreciate that people are finally seeing the situation for what it is. Work has been another source of stress. While my immediate boss has been understanding, I can tell that the higher-ups are concerned about how this situation might affect the company. There have been whispers about client meetings being rescheduled and concerns about security. My boss called me into her office last week to discuss the situation. She offered to let me work remotely for a while, which I've gladly accepted. It's been nice to have one less thing to worry about, even if I do miss the structure and social interaction of the office. I'm still staying at Sarah's place. We've set up some extra security measures, new locks, a camera doorbell, that sort of thing. It's not ideal, but it helps me feel safer. Sarah has been incredible through all of this. She's taken time off work to accompany me to court dates, stayed up late talking me through panic attacks, and never once made me feel like a burden. I don't know how I'll ever repay her kindness. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my relationship with Tyler. Looking back, I can see so many red flags that I ignored or excused. The way he'd guilt me into paying for things, his inability to hold down a job, how he'd turn every argument around so that I ended up apologizing. It's made me realize how much I was compromising my own happiness and well-being for someone who wasn't willing to do the same for me. I've also been reflecting on my own family history and how it might have influenced my choices. Growing up with a mother who struggled with depression, I got used to taking care of others at a young age. I wonder if that made me more susceptible to Tyler's charm, more willing to excuse his behavior because I was used to putting others' needs before my own. I'm taking things one day at a time. Some days are harder than others. There are moments when I miss the good times with Tyler, when I question if I'm doing the right thing. But then I remind myself of how far I've come, of the peace I feel when I'm not constantly worrying about his next crisis. I'm not sure what the future holds. The legal proceedings are ongoing, and I'm still adjusting to this new normal, but I'm trying to focus on rebuilding my life and moving forward. I'm grateful for the support I've received from Sarah, my family, and many of you here on Reddit. Your advice and encouragement have been a lifeline during this difficult time. Update 3. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and I'm cautiously optimistic that things are finally starting to settle down. The constant anxiety that had become my daily companion is slowly easing, replaced by a tentative sense of normalcy. First, the legal matters. The lawsuit from Tyler's mom was dismissed, just as my lawyer predicted. The judge saw it for what it was, a baseless attempt to intimidate me. While I'm relieved, the whole process was incredibly stressful. I had to take time off work for court appearances, and the legal fees have put a significant dent in my savings. But at least it's over. and I can start to move past it. Tyler violated the restraining order one more time about a month ago. He showed up at my parents' house thinking I might be there. My dad, who's always been protective of me, didn't hesitate to call the police. Tyler was arrested again, and this time the consequences are more serious. He's been in jail for the past few weeks, awaiting trial for multiple violations of the restraining order. I've heard through mutual friends that Tyler's family is finally starting to realize the gravity of the situation. His sister, Emma, reached out to me last week. We were close once before everything fell apart. She apologized for her family's behavior and let me know that they're trying to get Tyler into a rehab program once he's released. While I appreciate the gesture, I've made it clear that I don't want any further contact with Tyler or his family. That chapter of my life is closed. On a more positive note, I've moved back into my own place. Sarah has been amazing through all of this, but it feels good to have my own space again. I've taken some extra security precautions, a new alarm system, reinforced locks, and I've even started taking self-defense classes. It's empowering to feel like I'm taking control of my safety. Work has been going well. I'm back in the office part-time, which has been a nice change of pace. My colleagues have been supportive, and focusing on my career has been a healthy distraction. I've even been given some new responsibilities on a big project, which feels like a vote of confidence from my boss. I've also started to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. I realized how isolated I'd become in my relationship with Tyler, always managing his crises or making excuses for his behavior. Now, I'm rediscovering interests I'd let slide and meeting people who share them. Last weekend, I went hiking with a group from a local meetup, something I used to love but hadn't done in years because Tyler always complained it was too boring. I've even started dating again, very casually. Nothing serious, just coffee or drinks here and there. It's been nice to remember that there are decent guys out there who can hold a conversation and have their lives together. I'm taking things slow and being very cautious, but it feels like a step in the right direction. There are still tough days, of course. Sometimes I'll catch myself thinking about Tyler, wondering how he's doing or if things could have been different. But those moments are becoming fewer and farther between. I'm learning to trust my instincts again and to value my own happiness and well-being. Looking back on everything that's happened, I can see how much I've grown. I'm stronger than I ever knew, more resilient than I gave myself credit for. This experience has taught me a lot about setting boundaries, about not compromising my own values for someone else's comfort. I'm not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. I'm focusing on building the life I want, surrounded by people who support and uplift me. It's not always easy, and I know there may be more challenges ahead, but I feel equipped to face them now, on my own terms. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have been invaluable. To anyone out there going through something similar, know that it does get better. Trust yourself, surround yourself with support, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. You're stronger than you know.